early in life, I found myself being able to promote my ideas, values, ambitions, and whatnot into the format of running companies. So I've been embracing my own drive in terms of aspiring for doing things in a corporate format, starting small businesses back in the days, and I started out in the furniture industry back in the days. And from that, I've learned, and I've been around running companies now for 40 years. It's kind of disturbing realizing that time has been flying. But anyhow, the common denominator with all my businesses have always been purpose in one way or another. So
Mm.
speaking about POC, for instance, protection for skiers, snowboarders, and cyclists, the mission was all about, doing the best we can to possibly save lives and to reduce consequences of accidents by better and more accurate, products, basically. When it comes to cake, the recent unfortunate, ending up with liquidation, cake business that I guess we'll be, talking more about, had it's reason to inspire the market towards zero emission by combining excitement with responsibility. And that said, again, built on four pillars: purpose, innovation, performance, and physical quality. And before that, getting back to the early days when I was in furniture and ceramics and all that, glassware, you know, homey stuff, I had that same drive, but at that time it was all about extending life cycles by being able to develop stuff that reflected at times better than anything else. And it has been the kind of what I've been bringing with me at all times, which is the stuff that does reflect its time better than the others, whether it be, a piece of furniture or a vehicle or whatever it might be. That becomes the kind of eternal mark of its time. And that's what's later being, sold at auction houses and being passed on from generation to generation and so forth.
Mm.
And I think that is the sustainability in one way, one form or another has always been the driving force in whatever I've done. So again, blurry kind of explanation to why I'm doing what I'm doing, and again, the format running companies and therefore being able to kind of emphasize or execute whatever I believe has been, what has been pulling me forward.
And that's interesting. And we'll get into a lot of that journey. We're going to unpack it a bit as we go through this conversation. And, ultimately, just for those of you who are listening live on LinkedIn and for those of you who joined us on the Zoom as well, what we're trying to do with Stefan and with everyone that comes on our Great Transition Service to understand a little bit about what does it take as a human being, as a regular person, how the hell do we make this transition happen faster, and what might we learn from the process? But one of the first questions for you, Stefan, and Mark, you can jump in as usual whenever you feel like it. But Stefan, one of the things I'm interested is, you talked about having a long running sense of this, and it's been a principle that's been at the heart of your work for a long time. Do you see like the transition, I call the transition, just so I explain it, from like post-fossil carbon world to the next positive,
Yeah.
regenerative, green and clean world? Do you see
Yeah.
that thing? Do you see it hotting up in general? Or do you think it's do you think it's going up? Do you think it's going flat? What do you think it's going down? What's your perspective?
Right now I'm a bit disturbed because it kind of
Yeah.
it lost its kind of vibrant forward moving energy that it had. Again, big picture, I think that we will deal with something that is, we share an obligation towards the planet collectively, and we simply need to
Mm.
deal with that. But there's
Yeah.
also, it needs, patience is super important here because it's not about changing things from one day into another. We need to move a number of different, bricks here to make sure that we open up and kind of lubricate the ability to actually get to deal with the big challenges.
Mm.
And I think that we should all understand that we must and we can all contribute, small or big, on an individual level. So my driving force in that sense is whatever we can do as a part of something much more complex to inspire others in pointing towards what can be done is an obligation of mine, and this should be an obligation of, to everyone. At this point, I think that for the past 18 months, we've seen a slowdown in terms of I'd say, focus, interest, and so forth into to transitional matters. And again, it has its reasons. I mean, we have a few issues out there that are more severe than ever before. which is not directly connected to the transition. I think that the ability for people in general to actually, keep their focus on more than one or two things is very limited. So we're in I'd say in a stagnation phase when it comes to the transition process at this, which is just disturbing, but it will come back. It needs to come back, and it will, I think. I
think you're right. I've noticed that there's some data about the number of times things like ESG and sustainability have been mentioned in earnings calls, right? That's the calls from the companies to analysts. And it's gone right down in recent years because war is more important.
Yeah. But that should be. Did you read those statistics somewhere, or did you just?
Yeah. There's a company that monitors word counts. Word count per meetings.
Yeah, cool. If you got that link at any point, I'd love.
I'll send it to you, man. I'll send it to you.
Thank you.
I'll dig it out. But one of the things is, of course, that as we know that we're only one crisis away from it being right on top of the agenda again, is my suspicion. So I think it's interesting, the phase, you talk about a phase of stagnation. I guess Mark, you must have seen this in digital transition or transformation, as we used to call it. Like, presumably there were moments where it was hotter and colder, or was it in your experience like an inexorably rising up and up and up and up and up over time? Did it come and go like that?
No, I think we're focused on our own reality, and sometimes when we're having a good time, it can influence our own perception of what's going on in the real world, can't it? And I don't know. So I think it's difficult to see a trend. I do think, though, Stefan, I'm a big believer, as we just touched on right at the beginning, of the reason why things stagnate, and the reason, and this is, I'm just reflecting really the podcast, that brilliant podcast you shared, Leo, just today. But unless we can get really honest with ourselves about the challenges we're actually facing, it's all just built on sand. Do you know what I mean? And I know it's very difficult because everyone's got their head down anyway. But I do feel like I in the same way as Britain needs a Truth and Reconciliation Commission about empire, because unless it gets its head round what the despicable history that we have and perfidious Albert, unless we get our head around that, I don't think we're going to be able to move forward as a nation. I think it's the same with the climate transition. We all know the really gnarly bad things we don't really want to talk about. I think we got to start talking about them more, and then we will find solutions to them. And by gnarly, I mean the dependency of what's going on in the developing world. You know what I mean? Like, and all the stuff that it's just like it's.
Yeah.
Stefan, you talk about patience, and I guess that might be a principle for managing this transition process, both as a person of psychological good health as you go through it. Is that something you've experienced before, or it's just come through in this recent work? Talk to me a little bit about your experience of working with and using patience in doing the brilliant work that you've been able to do over the years.
No, I think patience is something that occurs to me maybe the more experience I get. That there's no quick fix. There's so many things that need to actually interact and integrate simultaneously to actually move the needle and get the needed momentum to make things happen. So I think that and again, I'm not negative about, I'm worried, I'm super worried, but I'm also positive in terms of the opportunities that we have, and the fact that we will find ways, not just by sitting down and waiting for them to arrive, but with different initiatives around that will, get us to the point of changing. But again, I might be a bit tired about, corporations and organizations and whoever it might be dressing themselves in an ESG kind of, I'd say context, and just, throwing out greenwashing aspects of how things will change rapidly, which is not the case. But again, I think that we need to regain the traction we had 18 months and back, because again, even though patience is important, we're also in a situation where things need to happen. So it's not, contradictory what I'm saying. It's more a practical reality of things that are complex and that will take time. But we need to make sure that to activate and to push that. So there's a hurry connected to the patients in this case, if that makes sense.
Quick, slow. Talk to me. I mean, must talk about the cake business and the bikes that you were building and your sort of initial intention for it. Because I'll tell you, maybe I told you before, Stefan, but when I was looking to build EdenLab and start this company that would be about helping harness and enable and create demand for greener, cleaner products and services, right? I looked around for really interesting examples, and if I saw one of your bikes, a really cool, amazing looking one in the store in East London, this would have been 2 years ago as I was in the throes of launching this thing. And I just looked at it, and to me, it was a representation of a better future. And I felt there's so few expressions of that. Most people have a negative vision of where we're headed, and very few really well-told stories or examples that come to life for people about that. And what I looked at when I saw that was a slice of what tomorrow might be, and that tomorrow might not be totally dreadful. It could be, you could have fun on a motorbike, for example, and you could enjoy the thrill of a scrambler or a motorbike and do it in such a way that might not be as damaging as the kind of internal combustion engine bikes that we all see all around us. Talk to me about how you got there. Why bikes? Why that? Tell us a bit about how it happened.
And again, I think that just starting by, and I think that there's this opportunity that one may exercise, which is, I've been doing product development throughout my whole life, but I'm actually a motorcycling hater myself personally. So when there's a hater, yes. So when there's a Ducati passing by in the street, which is, super noisy, and I'm like, you're disturbing, man, get out of here. So there was never ever any romancing in terms of developing motorbikes. That was never my childhood dream or anything like that. These days, I love riding motorbikes because the first thing I do whenever I get into a new area of business is to understand and learn from it. So I went to take all of these enduro classes and so forth, and I truly enjoy, riding silently in the woods on an enduro electric bike these days. It's amazing. But what I did do was, when I actually ran into an electric motorbike for the first time, realizing that, hey, this is quiet, I'm not going to disturb, and I'm not going to pollute. This is the perfect discovery kind of, vessel. And I got one. And eventually I had tons of these bikes at my country house, and realized that they were far from, developed to the level they ought to be in terms of, technology around. So I kind of, started elaborating, what would the ultimate off-road electric motorbike be? And I think that even though I have a lot of skepticism from, old school combustion engine geeks and so forth about what we were doing, I realized that we could build something super light that the majority of people with no prior experience, and even those with experience that, promoted the idea of going on something that was, light and electric in this case, truly enjoyed it, even though they'd been, world champions in motocross or whatever. But that was the kind of drive from the beginning. And then I just realized that there's this huge transitional opportunity with the fact that infrastructure and urban transportation will change towards, similar vehicles to what we're developing or were developing with Cake. So it all kind of came together. And I think that one of the key things here when it comes to my belief in terms of what's the best way of promoting a climate-oriented initiative, bringing a new vehicle to the market. And that is like with any other product, and I was touching on it as of before, anything that is long-term and sustainable in terms of both physical as well as aesthetical acceptance is what promotes climate better than anything else, because I believe that the strongest enemy to the climate is actually our pace of consumption. We all buy too many things too often that ends up being garbage before we know it. So by extending life cycle by higher quality, it made sense starting on the off-road side, where we needed to understand what it takes to jump a bike, 30 meters and do a flip, because all of that competence would then be able to be integrated and implemented in urban bikes with a life cycle of 12, 14, 16 years, rather than just breaking down So all of these, and this is my thinking, not saying that I'm unique, but it's all about making sure that everything is connected and the planets, are in line, and when they are, and when there's, a way to kind of, finalizing or getting to the point of a perfect cocktail somewhat. That's when I get the goosebumps and, get to the point where I need to make this happen. And I've had a few of those epiphanies in my life, and CAKE was the most recent one.
That's cool.
What was it, Stefan? What did you get wrong? Because we all know the average kind of life expectancy of a startup, and I've definitely had more busts than I've had, more misses than I've had hits. And sometimes it's really obvious. You think, oh, okay, yeah, but sometimes it's not. I'm interested in what wasn't right in the mix.
I believe that the biggest problem in this case, when we got to the point of filing for liquidation, was basically that we were not supported with the resources needed and what we had planned for. So, I mean, in this case, it's very much like I tend to, compare a process like this with, building a house. So you're building a house, you start sketching on a piece of paper, and you get the concept, conceptual direction right, and then you go to an architect, and the architect starts making the drawings, and that's from what you build the financial plan based on those drawings, and you start building, platforms and concrete and electricity and water and whatever needs to be to be done before the building starts, before you start building the actual house. And then in the process, suddenly the guy who was supposed to support with wood, he pulls out.
Right.
So we're there with the platform with the intention of building something at a specific size, and suddenly there's no resources are gone, or partial resources are gone. And that's the main, and I'd say that we've been suffering too from a number of different aspects that have kind of simultaneously happened with synchronicity, whether the inflation, the lack of interest in climate related topics, the fact that the fundraising market went dead pretty much, for reasons that also overlap what I just said. And so again, I think that a sign of the times, and I can tell you, I've raised, I've closed 25 rounds throughout my career in different businesses and so forth. This is the first time I fail, and it's never been easy. I mean, it's always about getting the money in the last week or couple of weeks before, ending up in a similar situation. And this time it didn't. And honestly, when it was I panicked, of course, due to the fact that the days just went on and on and on. And, we got to the point where we, just before filing, I had my CFO at the court in Stockholm holding the filing in his, the filing paper before the court was closing, on the 1st of February this year. And I was on the phone negotiating with, different potential investors. And 15 seconds, before closing that day, where it was the deadline of actually filing, I had to tell him that we out, and at that time we were missing out on about 500,000 euros, and he just had to drop the filing paper. And that said, not believe we would get into that situation. And even though there has been a number of things playing against us, are there things that we could have done differently? Yes, if I had been aware when we started, we were meant to close this round that we've been, we were able to support our operations thanks to being spoon fed with convertible loans from our current cap table, step by step, since we aimed to close the C round back in August in 2022. So during 18 months, we've been struggling. I probably did 250 meetings with potential investors. And I'd say that we came from a situation where evaluations and so forth for companies was peaking, during 2021. And if I had accepted a lower evaluation, a much lower valuation, and in hindsight, it would have made sense back in August in 2022, we would probably have been able to bridge this whole situation,
Right.
that, you know, which is now the financial climate. But it was so far away from what, you know,
It's hard to accept, isn't
yeah,
it?
yeah. I mean, it was like,
You're
you know,
anchored somewhere
I
else.
think that if we had cut our evaluation by 50% compared to what the post-closing evaluation had been when we did the B round
Yeah.
in 2021, we would probably have been able to actually to succeed. But to me, that was abstract like nothing else. It was like cutting evaluation into half at that time when we really did not understand what, you know, where the market was turning. You know, I to be honest, I don't think that it would have happened, because we were striding and learning by the time that we needed to lower the valuation, the pre-money valuation, to actually get, you know, things going. But I think that we played it the best we can. And do I regret anything? No, but I understand intellectually that if we had played it differently, we may have succeeded to bridge the situation that actually got to the point where we had to file. That was a long answer, but I needed to kind of explore whatever happened while I was talking.
No, that's good. Thank you.
No, it's
Thank you for,
interesting.
you know, sharing it openly with us. Mark, go on. Do you have anything else you want to ask?
No, please go.
And in terms of, I mean, you were shipping the bikes right already, or you were waiting? That was still something that was in the future. Like, could I have bought one if I decided to buy one? I could have bought one.
Yeah, we've delivered 6,000 bikes around the world.
Yeah.
Right.
So there was,
Okay.
and you think there was demand from the wider public for these
Yeah,
sorts
I
of
think
products?
that, you know, again, if we just gather the different reasons why I think, you know, wouldn't support your targets and ambitions, I think one of the major, I'd say, mistakes we did from day one, and that was the sign of the times as well, when we started raising money back in 2017 to 2018, and going forward, you know, it was all about direct to user. So it was all about making sure to set up something online that would work and support our ability to sell stuff direct to user.
Yeah.
And that had been influenced by, you know, again, the venture capital kind of ecosystem. And they're mainly software guys, and they were all into, you know, make sure to have a super strong online presence, and, you know, take it from there. And we soon learned that to be able to actually to sell bikes, and this is not a unique insight. I mean, everyone within the vehicle or automotive industry knows this. 75% of all sales are based on the fact that people get to test ride or test drive the vehicle. And in this sense, we got to the point where we had 7 or 8 direct to user point of sales around the world. At the same time, realizing that we need to, you know, open up for an omni-channel perspective. And we already started pursuing that. So we open up for distribution in countries where we hadn't had any presence before. So Japan, Thailand, China, and a few other markets opened up. And we started, you know, knocking on doors to retailers to make sure that there was someone in Munich or there was someone in Hamburg, whatever, where we did not have, you know, all presence ourselves, to be able to actually get people's asses on the bike, because that's how you sell bikes.
Yeah.
And then, you know, again, looking back, I don't think that we would have been able at the time to raise the financing needed if we would have told the venture capital market that this is an omni-channel strategy. We're going to go with online ourselves, direct to user, together with retail. They would have said, this is not our line of business. It's all about online. And then you can look at companies like Tesla, for instance. They're super successful, but again, they're not a young company anymore. They're still young, but they've been around for 20, 22 years. And it took them a hell of a long time before, you know, there was someone within your neighborhood, a friend of yours, that actually did, you know, drive a Tesla. So you could, you know, have a ride with him and start, you know, the physical presence in that sense helped them sell more cars and so forth.
And this is, Stefan, this is back to your point about patience, right? There's the difference between patience, infrastructure capital, and fast VC and PE.
And I can hate myself for not being more, I'd say, what's the word I should be using here? Lack of perseverance among investors is clear here, because they, and especially the guys from the software business getting into tangible, you know, physical stuff, there's an immediate contradiction, and not at least when it comes to growth, because they would tell you that unless we, have a growth rate of 3x, we're not going to be, valid in this case, or for future financing. And I would say that I was fighting at a constant basis, saying that we did 2x every year. But I can tell you in hindsight, again, that 2x was too fast in the beginning, because there's certain things that you cannot compromise with. You need to make sure that there is anything from customer compliance aspects, whether it be service or just, support and coaching or whatever it might be, as one example, together with the need to get people's assets on the bikes. So again, I was a part of that ecosystem too, because I did, try to find the ways to support the anticipation or the demand or the idea of growth rates and so forth. But again, if we had the opportunity of growing the business at half the pace, we would potentially have, we would have been better off in that sense.
Yeah, that's really interesting. It's so true, by the way, of so many very worthwhile, very smart, very attractive initiatives that are born from the new world that's emerging, right? I think about, there's a famous upmarket store in London, you'll know, called Selfridges, that has a bunch of different ways of encouraging people not to buy new clothes, but to repair their old clothes, or to rent their clothes, or to buy really high-end secondhand things. And a lot of people in business are trying to make their more sustainable products desirable. But actually, and I think this is the point from the story you told us about physical retail and being there in real life and bums on bikes, sometimes when we focus on making sustainability desirable, maybe we need to make it easier. It's like it's actually an enablement story, and that takes time to build. I guess the one thing that scares me around the very common sense things that you're talking about, and I'm sure Mark would agree with, about doing it right and growing at the right pace and everything else, is how time is short, isn't it, in the challenge that we face in terms of at least bringing better companies and better products to work to the world that can replace the evil, broken ones that exist before them. So it's a tight rope to walk, isn't it?
I'm a big fan of the 3 deaths theory, which is all companies have to die 3 times. And I whenever we have a hypothesis that we test and it doesn't test well, or we have an assumption, I think the natural reaction is, oh, it's broken. I personally always think, oh, it's just not now. So I sort of, maybe that's just being a bit too Pollyanna-ish about it, but I sort of always feel like actually sometimes you just need to wait in the waves. I'm a big I'm sure I've used that before with you, Leo. I think sometimes great products just need to have their time. Yeah, so nothing's ever dead in my mind.
And so tell us a little bit, if you can, Stefan, a bit about, I know you've got a new project or a new venture which you're getting into, and I suspect has some of the truths of the design thinking and the way you've gone about your business before kind of still at the heart of it. Tell us a bit about what you're doing now and next.
So at this point, when everything came down on us, I was like, or at the same time, we kind of opened the gate to opportunities when it comes to companies knocking on our door. So immediately, after announcing the fact that we're filing for bankruptcy, I had like 25 inquiries from around the world with different companies wanting to do, projects together with us from a design, branding, communication perspective. And it's, pretty much what I've been doing throughout my whole career, either, with my own brands or being a consultant. So it was like a natural kind of extension to the disaster that came along, being able to, to collaborate with companies, with other companies. So we kind of, I kind of gathered the design force at CAKE, David and Oscar and Fanny, and started, a new venture to do exactly what we've been doing, which is all about, business analysis, making sure that there is a strong reason to, if anything should be done, what should be done, why should we do it, what's the purpose here, and who's the target. who's going to be the user, and then to kind of materialize that through product. And again, I'm a very product focused guy, even though I realize that the fact that there's no need to bring additional products really to this planet, but at any point when there's something that will kind of, through innovation and through increased, I'd say, functionality or whatever it might be, that does support, again, getting back to the obligation towards planet Earth in general, we would love to be able to contribute with that. So that's what we're doing now. So we're consultants, and we started off by bringing the design team on board, but there will be engineers, and ESG people and project managers and so forth, continuing building the entity as we move forward.
And is there a sort of, without giving away your secrets, but are there areas of the world that I mean geography, I mean in terms of things people do in their lives, are there places that excite you to innovate in next? Is there something you're particularly focused on and you'd like to hear? Who knows, one of them might be listening into this call, right? Anything you particularly be keen on?
I think that there are, one of the most exciting projects that we're now, getting into is the future of, increasing the level of efficiency for e-commerce by robotized storage warehouse systems. And I would never ever have come up with an idea like that, of course, if someone asked me, hey, what do you want to do? But this is such a tremendous opportunity of supporting a number of things that I think, are crucial to small and medium-sized businesses, with the ability of actually performing much better, and also with an upside when it comes to the effects on the climate, actually. So again, it was not on my bucket list, but it came to be something that actually intrigued me a lot. And I'd say that again, with everything that we've learned from the electric motorized two-wheeler side of things, there are a number of associated businesses. Of course, other two-wheeler companies that have seen what we've been doing. There are battery companies, there are battery storage companies. Super interesting, of course, when it comes to the transition from a broad perspective. And I'd say a number of these companies are very, engineering driven, and engineers seem to have they love innovating, which is beautiful, and they're lousy at communicating, generalizing. And I think that being able to be, to being confronted with great innovation, and with the ability of us to support and, spreading the word and making stuff tangible and understandable is a duty that I love doing. And again, at any point where it points towards better, it excites me.
Yeah, that's cool. It strikes me as a great irony of climate tech and the world we're moving towards, is that actually having really powerful and distinctive brands becomes more important. I mean, it sounds like the worst kind of overconsumption bollocks, you don't mind me saying, that you might need brands in the future. But if people can't find or see or understand the promise of a brilliant, life-saving, planet-saving, nature-saving idea, then we're sunk. And you're right, the people have got the perfection, and they treat their technical side with such genius and such care. And then the storytelling is kind of a little bit rough around the edges.
But also, they tend to be terrible business people as well. Again, this is like a terrible generalization, but so many of the businesses I've invested in that are engineer driven, I mean, they've got a brilliant product, but they're fucking hopeless CEOs. Just ship the fucking thing. Just stop tinkering, please.
So I said to you at the beginning, Stefan, I was going to ask you a question, and Mark, this came out from our last interview, I think, a conversation about a week or so ago with Caitlin Prenderville. You can catch all these on YouTube, by the way, as well as on LinkedIn. They're on if you search EdenLab Studios on YouTube, you'll find them. But it was this, which is, what one thing from this current world would we like to keep and take through to the future as we go through the transition? And then another question, which is, and what one thing from this current world would we like to lose and leave behind as we make a shift to the future? You're our first guinea pig for taking this question, Stefan, and then you can start with either one. Is there a thing you want to leave or a thing you want to take?
Yeah, I'm going to be super, not, yeah, I'd say it's a tough question, and I wish I had a super smart, answer to it. And I don't. I feel like the immediate kind of pain that strikes me is all of the plastic, bottles of the world, or walking any beach these days, whether you go,
Yeah.
to tropical waters, wherever it might be, or the coast around Sweden. I kind of, I see plastic bottles everywhere, and I salute these initiatives. This young Dutch guy who's, doing this system for collecting bottles in the ocean. Amazing stuff. So, I'm sticking to the ocean. So, I wish for a sober future, the life in the oceans regaining, it's number of species and fish and whatever it might be. So that's, I'm bringing the fish together with me into the future without plastic bottles in the
Plastic.
ocean. Yeah.
That's a pretty good answer. And I can relate. I was on the seaside recently, and it is unbelievable how much volume there is. I should ask you this question, Mark, as well, but that might be a bit harsh.
That sounds like a desert. It sounds like desert island disc, doesn't it?
And what's your one record? Yeah.
Yeah.
What's the
What's
record
your
you'll take with you?
God? I think there's. Yeah, I don't want to keep very much, as you say. There's quite a lot you'd probably take away, but I think it would probably you'd probably take away some of the brain chemistry, maybe. You take away some of the kind of psychological obstacles, wouldn't you? I think if you had the choice, if that was in our you know our behest.
Yeah, that's right. Probably some of the biggest limitations are actually not the technology and the science, although they are very difficult in truth.
I'm really getting into this idea that we're not born consumptive. And that's not the right word, the right use of the word consumptive, I understand, but we're not built consumers. We've learned this behavior quite recently as human beings. I certainly would eject that behavior. Yes, there's a narcissism and a real otherworldliness about our desire to consume, which is, it's not actually that human, I don't think. I think it's breathless and it's fake.
Yeah, that's really, I mean, that's really interesting.
And maybe just listening to what you're saying now, I will actually, I can be much more concrete than the plastic bottles and the fish actually. And I think that to me, it's promoting another attitude and what creates desire. But the crappy kind of pace or the pace of consumption, buying crappy stuff. If we could establish, a perspective on items that would have a much more durable and existence but the problem here, and I know I've been through, to this point a number of times before throughout my career, with the wish to be able to support the market to actually buy more qualitative stuff, but quality will always come with a higher price. There are no real compromises in this sense. But and how do you support someone who does not have the cash to pay something which is too expensive from a cash availability point of view, or liquidity point of view? And I think that society has a responsibility to promote high quality at higher pricing, with a system where, we're being supported, whoever we are, to actually buy that more durable, extended life cycle kind of product with an actual cost, which will be lower per use, but used for a much, much longer time. And I think that the way market economy has now constituted itself, we need to wind that in a way where we support the ability for more people to increase their quality.
That's interesting.
Fewer items will be sold. And sometimes when I bring this topic up, people would say, yeah, but what about all the companies producing stuff? That's not a problem, because the amount of labor that needs to be put into something that has quite higher quality will mean that we're going to need the same use of people making our stuff. But it's all about the transaction aspect of things. How do we get more people to be able to actually use stuff more expensive for a longer period of time? So this is what I would love to see, a solution to somehow. And I don't have the solution to it. I just understand that this could be a way forward. And you know, and I'd say that just, you know, by at this point inspiring people to share that perspective, let's buy something. And this is where I started, you know, through this conversation. How do we actually, you know, looking at the products that do become the classics of the time, the stuff that is being sold at auction houses down the road, they're all great representatives of its time when they've been developed. And you know, one of those aspects, you know, whether it be expression, reason to exist, choice of material, the way it's been made, and so forth, it's also another common denominator in that sense is high quality.
That's really good. I'm seeing somebody who's works for a big bank in London on Wednesday, and they're busy financing the transition for companies. And the question is, who's financing the transition for the individual? I shall ask him, and I'll ask for a large loan at the same time. So we'll come back. That's a great answer. That's a great and thoughtful answer.
Yeah.
Yeah, I will. So listen, we've got some nice questions coming through in the chat, and I think it'd be nice to, I don't know whether some of you guys who are in the waiting in the room here would like to have a go. Jeffrey, I really like Jeffrey Mutabazi. I really love your question. I don't know whether would you be open to asking it on screen if I get you up? I might just see a thumb coming up, so I'm going to do it. Ask to unmute and ask to start a video, and hopefully you might be able to get up there and ask your question yourself, which should be kind of fun.
Hey.
Jeffrey, are you there? There you are, man. How are you?
I'm good. How are you guys?
Yeah, all right. Tell us, ask your question. Maybe tell us very, very briefly who you are. Don't do a sales pitch, ideally, and then ask your question if you can.
Okay, so my name is Geoffrey. I'm based in Uganda. I run a startup that builds electric bicycles in Africa. So more like cake, but a bicycle, not a motorcycle. So my question is really around, I had been following Stefan's work with the CAKE AP or anti-poaching bike in Africa. And I saw that you guys had actually run some pilots, put a few bikes on the road, and you were actually looking to scale this up. And I was super excited about this. I saw the partnership with Go Zero and, you know, how you are powering all these bikes and changing lives for poachers and reducing poaching, really. Changing lives for wildlife rangers and reducing poaching. But my question is really around with where CAKE is at right now. Where does such a project go? Is it going to be left hanging? Were there some key lessons that you learned from that, you know, would foster some continuation? Is there some sort of, I would say, material or a blog post you could put out that, you know, kind of guide someone who would be maybe at one point or another looking to pick this up again at one point, if you're not going to typically continue doing this? And yeah, I think that's my question.
Thank you. So I'll try and respond to that the best I can. I'd say that the biggest learning was, you know, the idea of being able to combine a new type of vehicle innovation, solar power, being able to charge in the field, the aspect of silently being able to chase down poachers and all that. That was magic. In real life, I think that the biggest challenge was the level of maintenance and competence to maintain these vehicles in the backcountry. I mean, I wish for the project to continue. I have no direct insight into this as CAKE has been sold to a new Norwegian buyer. I'm not part of this organization anymore. I wish that it will continue. I cross my fingers, but I think that the next big effort will be to make sure that there is a service maintenance and compliance kind of asset somewhat to train these guys using these bikes. And we know we had one of our colleagues, Sinje Gottwald, riding the same CAKE bike from Barcelona to Cape Town in 122 days.
That was so cool.
And that worked out perfectly well. And you know, she only brought one extra battery. So they take a lot of, you know, punishment, but you need to make sure that there's enough competence with the users out there. The last question, I would say that there is a Danish company named Motorbikes in Africa. I just happened to get in touch with them briefly as they had some interest when the trustee took over, when we filed for liquidation. And I would actually search Motorrhino, MOTORHINO, and see what they're doing. And they're developing and they're making their bikes in Africa too. And I think that they're building them sturdy enough to be able to do similar things as we did with the CAKE.
Yeah, that's cool. Shall I ask another question? I think, Devraj, I've seen you've got a nice question. Are you up to coming up? I'll try and see if I can get you on and see if you are up for asking it. Are you there?
I'm here.
Hi, man.
Hi,
Tell
Leo.
tell me very briefly about you, and then let's hear your question.
Yeah, I'm an industrial designer based in India. And first of all, kudos to Stefan and Team Cake. Even today in the morning, we were looking at the product because I'm at present developing an electric two-wheeler for India. But this big question. There might be around 400 startups doing the same thing, and everybody is just trying to be a little bit better than the product out there and taking that piece of the cake or the pie. Nobody's really asking what the bigger question, like what's the point of all this? Who needs another two-wheeler, right? Especially in a country where consumption is so huge, and we have 100 to 200 million young earning people who will consume for the next 20, 30 years as well. So my question is, how do we make innovation socially cool? Because we are in the world of social media, when we click a picture of food before eating it, and we are doing a lot of things to tell others about it rather than us feeling about it more. This is what we have seen, right? So
yeah. So your question is here: how, with such a short span of attention and so much kind of a distraction, how do we make sustainability more cool or desirable? Is that the fair question?
yes, and also when you are trying to start up something which is for a fact great for the world and for the user, but is someone willing to put money in it? Like I heard Stefan talk about 3x growth, and we are also fueled. A lot of startups in India are fueled by digital money, and they expect that kind of pace. And hardware is hard, so we have a disconnect there. So is someone willing to fund or go through that journey to make products that are actually good for us, and we don't know it yet?
Cool. Okay.
All right. So trying to I think that we did everything we could when it comes to cake, to inspire the market for sustainability oriented perspectives, ideas, aspirations. And even though we only got halfway, I think that this is still the big opportunity. And I think that this is what I wish for, not to only inspire the market, but also to inspire other organizations and companies, because there is an opportunity. There is an opportunity to be, cool and funky and whatever it might be, with something that has content, which has purpose. It's all about, utilizing the ability to create these reasons why, and telling this story in the most vibrant way you can, showing examples and so forth. I think that, again, without, looking at myself, pounding our own chest at this point, but I'm sure that if Cake would have had the opportunity of actually surviving in a more to where we would have had the chance to actually continue and increasing the level of impact we had, both when it comes to happy users and many, many more users using Cake bikes, but also continuing inspiring other companies following this route, because we need more initiatives, we need more examples, we need more organizations and initiatives in the same direction. And I think that we can make this happen. I think that long-term, durability and being smart about these things is what is going to be the new black. But it's going to take a little more, time than what I anticipated, at least on a personal level.
Yeah, that's great. I'm just writing that quote down. It's really good. We're coming close to the end of our time today, and I appreciate you making time, Stefan, from your car to be part of it, and Mark for joining in, and everyone else who's joined from around the planet for this conversation. I guess I'm gonna ask one closing question, and then we'll say bye. And by the way, you can catch this on YouTube, and you can see it on LinkedIn, and we'll share the link and so on. But my final question for you, Stefan, and I guess it's a sort of summary of the conversation we've had today, but so we know that there are probably 20 people in this call on Zoom, and maybe 100 or so others perhaps on LinkedIn, and we'll see what our reach is. Many of them are also working on the same themes that you've been doing and trying really hard to do it. And I really want to produce content for these guys and for the book that we're writing, which is a practical, helpful guide to people trying to make this journey themselves. If there was one piece of advice you might give that audience, if there was one thing to keep in mind on the journey, what what might you say?
Make sure that your confidence in yourself is at the highest potential level it can be. I think that what you're experiencing doing new and having this commitment to improving, to innovation and change and all that, there's so many naysayers out there that will question, if this is doable, if it's reasonable, if it can be done and so forth. And don't let that attitude, don't let be let down by that. I think that you need to gather, the solution providers, and not the problem, seekers. And so to shorten that, believe in what you're doing and be a bit obnoxious about your own idea, because the majority of people out there will try and kind of, shoot you down in that sense. And just, keep on going, be obnoxious.
I love it. Be obnoxious. That sounds like a chapter heading. You haven't been obnoxious on this call, by the way, Stefan. I'm pleased to say, or a little bit maybe, but
yeah.
I appreciate you for putting that in. So listen, thank you so much for making your time available for this important conversation today. Mark, thank you for, as ever, being here and asking smart questions and providing useful observation and insight from your experiences. And thank you to all of you who have joined from wherever you are, and to everyone on LinkedIn watching it live on a Monday lunchtime in the States, or evening, or even much later if you're ringing in from India. But I appreciate it. We'll be in touch. Do get in touch with us, and we'll speak to you soon. Thanks very much.
Cheers.
Thank you. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.